Pushed into the net by Kylian Mbappe.
Oh, Benyera, beautifully done.
Cornet finds Dembele. The first touch is good. The second is deadly.
Neymar still. Oh my word, what a goal.
Golovin. Lovely finish. Ajax delivery. Guendouzi's header. Here's an opportunity. Sanchez. Outrageous goal from Gael Kakuta. It's Payet again. And Dolberg. Messi again. This time maybe Messi's got it.
As reliable as Grey John Kier at a crossbar challenge, as technically proficient as a pair of RC Lens assists, as entertaining as a first half between Ajaccio and Strasbourg, and as stoically professional as Paris Saint-Germain in the face of romantic underdogs Lorient, this is Le Beau Jeu, the official Ligue 1 podcast, keeping you right up to date with everything you need to know about French football. I'm your host, Robbie Thompson. And joining me today, we have Ligue 1 commentator and AFP football journalist, Andy Scott. How are you, Andrew?
Good morning, Robbie. I'm okay, thank you. The World Cup is getting closer and closer and closer, and it's pretty much all I'm thinking of now. But it was a good weekend of Ligue 1 football to pretty much sign off on. One more to go, and then it'll be Qatar.
Exactly. Well, Andy, and I don't think I've ever called you Andrew before. That felt very weird.
So my mum calls me.
You feel... Oh, still? Okay, yeah. Very good. So, Andy, half the Socceroos were born in Scotland or play there or played there before in the past. So I guess we all know who you'll be supporting in Qatar.
Anyone but England. Anyone but England. Including Australia.
Oh, come on. Yes, the Socceroos are up against the French. What's more, first up, we'll be chatting Les Bleus. Later on in the show, the last little segment of the show as well, we'll chat about Didier Deschamps' side, which will be announced on Wednesday, probably just about 24 hours after the Socceroos Scottish-influenced squad is announced as well. We're also joined by Luke Entwistle, based on the south coast of France, journalist following all the Ligue 1 action, just about every other sport as well for Monaco Life. Luke, how are you?
Morning, all good. Yeah, I'm a little bit like Andy. I'm not sure what I'm going to do after next week. There's just a big gap in my life for 6 weeks. What to fill it with?
Oh, there's plenty to watch, at least. I mean, what's the timing like in Europe? Is it good times? Here, the games go all night, from 9 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, so there will be some kickoffs that are very complicated.
Yeah, the timing in Europe should be considerably better than that. I think there's 2 hours between here and Qatar, so I think you've got games starting from kind of lunchtime in Europe up until quite late in the evening. So it should be good for anybody who's working. Of course, I think that the chances are you'll miss a couple of games during the day, but you'll be finished in time to tune into Mexico v Saudi Arabia. So all will be good.
Are you going, Andy, when you're there, are you going to be jumping on the new metro system and getting to more than one game a day? Is that the plan?
It's not the plan for me to go to more than one game a day because I think that would be a bit too much. But I was in Qatar in 2019 for the Club World Cup, and they just opened the metro, and obviously it was very, very slick and very impressive. I suspect there might be a few more people on it this time. I'm not sure how Doha is going to cope with up to 1 million people there at one time. So that's going to be interesting, to say the least.
Exactly. We went there with PSG. Would have been about then, maybe just before, and we went on the metro before anyone else. I remember spending the day, as part of the day with Thomas Meunier and a couple of other players, catching the metro around, and then getting the players to say how great it was. Of course, as they do. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us, and send us all your questions about Ligue 1 football, about the World Cup coming up. We've got one more show next week where we'll try and answer that before we, too, go off into a World Cup hiatus. We'll be back before the end of the year as Ligue 1 all kicks back into action. But send us your questions to Ligue1podcast@gmail.com. Now, we've had a couple of massive matches over the weekend, with first playing fourth as PSG travelled to Lorient. Lille and Rennes locked horns, the two form teams in the division. And then there was the Olympico, Marseille and Lyon at the Stade Velodrome. But we're going to start our roundup, where else but in Corsica, of course, where two relegation-threatened sides were going head-to-head, Ajaccio versus Strasbourg, the game of fear, as it should have probably been known, Andy Scott. Two sides paralysed by everything that was at stake and the fear of the drop, which is coming. Let's have a listen to what happened.
So who's going to take the free kick for Strasbourg? It's delivered by Bellegarde, and it's a stunning strike for the away side to take the lead with just 5 minutes played. Up and over the wall from 25 metres. Ball forward towards Kevin Gamero, the former French international, with an absolutely glorious lob over Benjamin Leroy. It's another superb goal from Gamero, and Strasbourg 2-0 up already. The long ball flighted forward by Djikou, and Gamero with the control on the chest, and he knew exactly where to place that. Benjamin Leroy ever so slightly off his line. You saw the little glance from Gamero. A fifth goal of the campaign. This is Youssef Belaili, Algerian international, with the ball in. Now then, appeals for a handball. Well, the hand of Thomas Delaine was very much raised and out from his body. And it is going to be a penalty for Ajaccio. Well, confirmation from Mathieu Vernis, the young referee. Youssef Belaili then to take the penalty, the Algerian international star who joined the Corsican club just last month after leaving the Ligue rivals Brest, looking for his first goal for his new club, and he tucks in the spot kick. There is hope again for Ajaccio as they reduce the deficit here. Strasbourg's lead now by 2-1. Here come Ajaccio again. Romain Hamouma driving towards the penalty box, picking out El Idrissi. They've equalised. Absolutely incredible. 2 goals in a minute. Straight from the kickoff, fighting to win back possession. Romain Hamouma driving towards the penalty box, and all credit to Mounaim El Idrissi. Really well taken goal. Ajaccio with newfound confidence could be in again. Youssef Belaili through on goal, chance to make it 3-2. And an excellent save from Matt Sells. Still alive perhaps a Belaili, down he goes, the referee with a big shake of the head. Was Youssef Belaili fouled by Thomas Delaine? Doesn't look like it, does it? The referee is going to come across and look at the VAR screen again. Was Belaili caught by Thomas Delaine? Bear in mind that Mathieu Vernis, rather theatrical shake of the head at first, but he was convinced by the VAR to come across and look at it, and it's going to be another penalty for Ajaccio. Oh, this is astonishing. Ajaccio from 2-0 down, they lead by 3-2, with 6 minutes still to play in the first half. Youssef Belaili on a hat-trick, of course. A really superb ball into the middle, and Ajaccio have scored again. Goodness me, Riyad Nouri with the goal, and it's 4-2. Youssef Belaili, who scored twice from the penalty spot, one of the penalties he won himself, now providing the assist for the veteran Riyad Nouri. Well, Strasbourg have to push men forward, and they risk being caught out at the back here. Romain Hamouma to make it 5. Down he goes under the challenge from Maxime Le Marchand. And Mathieu Vernis, the referee, has seen enough. It's another spot kick for Ajaccio. And it's Belaili, his third spot kick of the day, and he's put it wide. Well, he's run out of inspiration, it seems, Youssef Belaili. Horribly miscued spot kick and a let-off for Strasbourg.
Well, Andy, recently I think you called another potential game of the season with a little 4-3, didn't you, between Lille and Monaco? And here you are, 6 goals in 45 minutes. It was Ajaccio's 500th Ligue 1 match, and they were looking for that first home win, and they got it, even though it didn't look like it was going to happen.
Yeah, it was a crazy game of football. I mean, the funny thing is that Strasbourg in the previous 2 games had been 2-0 down and come back to draw 2-2. In this game, they were 2-0 up after 17 minutes, and actually 2 really good goals. I mean, the free kick for the first one, and then Kevin Gamero with just a sumptuous lobbed finish for the second goal, maybe just reminding Didier Deschamps what he can do with a couple of days to go before the France squad is named for the World Cup. I'm not sure that he's going to be in there, but he is still a great striker. And that at that point, it looked like Strasbourg were going to sort of cruise to victory because Ajaccio had scored 8 goals all season before that match on Saturday. So 8 goals in 13 games. And then they scored 4 goals in the space of 15 minutes at the end of the first half. Crazy scenes. And I mean, obviously you had over the course of the game 3 penalties, Youssef Belaili missing the last one. So he missed out on a hat-trick. But 3 penalties, all of them awarded after lengthy VAR reviews, the red card at the end following a VAR review. So, I mean, the 3 of us were talking, weren't we, before we started recording about the way in which VAR is changing the shape of the game. I think in this instance, the 3 penalties that were given, they probably were all penalties. You can't really say the referee was wrong to award penalties, but obviously what's interesting is that he didn't award a penalty in any.
He didn't award a single penalty. That's the thing.
In the first case, and the second one very theatrically shakes his head, when the challenge first happened. So it was quite. I mean, let's not get into a big debate about VAR, on the basis of this, but it was a tremendous game. I mean, there was a bit of a drop off in the second half, but tremendous match, a memorable match, and a really important win for Ajaccio because, as you said, it was their first home win this season. It's given them a big lift. What's really remarkable, I mean, I think Ajaccio obviously expected to be down there this season. What is remarkable, and we've said this several times because, one of our pundits obviously tipped Strasbourg to finish in the top 3 this season, and here we are now in November, more than a third of the way through the season. They've managed just 1 win, and that's obviously very worrying for them. They had quite a lot of fans who went down to that game in Corsica, given how far it is and how awkward it is to get to. A few hundred of them were there, and obviously at the end, the Strasbourg players were going across to sort of talk to them. The fans looked very angry. It's the kind of scene you quite often get in French football when the ultras like to sort of speak their minds to the players, and the players come across and look very apologetic. And Strasbourg should be doing better than this. I know they exceeded expectations last season, but they've gone below expectations quite considerably this season. Given the quality they have up front in particular, their defence really let them down. And I think even though there were 3 big talking points, three VAR penalties, I don't think they could really complain after the game. It was a very disappointing result for them. But yeah, a terrific game of football, and it just shows that often it's the ones that you don't expect that are the most entertaining ones.
Absolutely. Luke, your eyes on this contest, but also we know that 4 sides are going down, and just looking at the ladder, I mean, Andy says they've only won 1 game, which is the least of any club in the division, but they've only lost 6. And just looking a little higher up, 8th place Lyon have also lost 6. Ajaccio have now won 3. They're in the relegation zone, and you can go up as high as 11th place Reims, who have also only won 3. I mean, is all the bottom half of the table involved still in this relegation dogfight? And is it going to go that way? I mean, Nice in 9th are only 8 points above the relegation zone. Is this going to go all season?
I think it's bound to. With 4 teams going down, I think it has to go all the way through. I mean, this game, I did not have this one on my list to watch this weekend, but is easily the most exciting match of the weekend. No, I mean, there's 4 goals there for Ajaccio. I think no other team scored more than 2 the whole weekend. It wasn't a high scoring Ligue weekend, so that was really the match to watch. But I mean, I still worry for Ajaccio. I still worry for most of the teams down there. I'd say from Reims down, I think Clermont-Foot on 19, they've looked surprisingly quite solid and pretty good for the start of the season. So I think that they might just about be all right.
Yeah, I agree.
Reims, I think, will be okay. We might get on to talk about their strike force a little bit later, but I think that might take them over the line. But maybe from Toulouse downwards, I think every one of those teams is in there, even Nantes and Strasbourg, who at the start of the season, there's no way you would have said that they'd be in there in the relegation dogfight, but there they are. And I think there they will be until quite close to the end of the season.
Probably the biggest thing working in a team like Nice or Clermont or even Reims and Toulouse perhaps is just that there are so many other teams behind them that, yes, they could get sucked in, but there are so many other variables going into each round, and not everyone's going to pick up points. So, but I think this is going to be a massive quagmire of sides that are going to really struggle to pull away from the relegation zone.
I think there's a couple in there already. I think there's a couple in there already that you kind of, two maybe, that you could say, I think they're probably really struggling. I mean, Angers are the obvious one. I saw them at the Stade Louis II last weekend, and I didn't see anything that made me think that they could get out of the trouble that they're currently finding themselves in.
They've been working miracles the last few years as well on a club that's been, without its fans as they rebuilt their stadium. They've sold off their squad each year for about the last 3 years as well. This year, perhaps just one bridge too far for Angers, but they do look in all sorts of trouble at the bottom. Elsewhere, Ligue 1's two informed sides also met in week 14. Rennes were looking for 6 wins in a row as they travelled to Lille. A Lille side looking for a 4th win on the bounce and to keep their charge up the table continuing. Matt Spiro was calling the action.
Gomez goes short to Cabella. Back to Bomba. Oh, it's a great ball in. And surely Lille are going to score. They have done. Jose Font pounces. A lot of hesitancy in the heart of the Rennes defence there. It was a clever corner routine, but Genesio will not be happy with the lack of a reaction inside the 6-yard box. Andre Gomez flipping the ball over the top of the defence. A really bad mistake from Mondonda. Arthur Théat didn't react. Didn't react quickly enough anyway. Jose Font did. Yeah, it's a shocker for Mondonda. Now more possibilities for Lille. Remy Cabella. Cabella into the box. The shot and the save from Mondonda. That's better from the French international custodian. Getting down quickly to block that shot from Cabella. Font and Jallo both in the box. Again, it's a corner routine. Cleverly done, and again it's very dangerous. Mondonda pushing the ball away from the danger zone. The referee has received a message. Now, what's this about? He's going to go and have a look at something. Well, yeah, it's a big risk. Jonathan Bomba's got his arms around the Rennes defender, Christopher Wu. He's going to give a penalty. Penalty to Rennes. Now, Martin Terrier out injured. It's Benjamin Bourigeaud stepping up from the penalty spot. Only 3 out of 6 he's converted. Booze for the former Lens man. Benjamin Bourigeaud steps up and draws Rennes level. It's a big goal for Genesio's team. They were being outplayed for much of the game until now. They've been gifted this penalty really by Bomba's foul, and Bourigeaud dispatched it beautifully. Bourigeaud sending him the wrong way. Lille 1, Rennes 1. All to play for now. 5 minutes to go in this one. Oh, and a big opportunity. It's off the post from Jallo. We should really have scored. The flag has stayed down. Yeah, Jallo's onside. Beautifully crossed by Adam Unas. It's got to be scoring there, Thiago Jallo. This is Unas. Or rather, Cabella it was. This is Unas. Good cross from Unas! Oh, it's off the post again! Unbelievable. Bomba. Bomba! This time, Mondonda saves. Well, Rennes are hanging on just about here. Brilliant cross that from Adam Unas. If David had got a touch on it, the ball surely would have been in. And then Bomba getting the shot away, Mondonda getting down. Clear by Timothy Weir. The flag stayed down. Is this Jonathan David's moment? He's put it away, but the flag is raised. Brilliant finish from David, who must have thought in the back of his mind that he was offside. Now, will that be confirmed here? David, oh, it's very close. It's very, very close. This is Unas. Foul by Berger-Mailing. For the second time today, VAR has intervened, and for the second time today, the referee has taken action. Red card for Berger-Mailing of Rennes. He's only been on the pitch for a few minutes. Cabela's delivery. Oh, the header, and Mondondo with the save. Brilliant from the goalkeeper. Look at this from Mondondo. The header by Benjamin Andre. Brilliant reflexes.
So, Andy, to you first on this one. There was plenty of goal mouth action. Lille dominated a Rennes side that have been in fantastic form, a Rennes side that were also playing in Europe, and we'll talk about the European results as well. But Rennes lucky to survive this one, and a strange match with a big mistake from Steve Mondondo. There was another controversial penalty call as well, where the referee waved it away after a big dive that he clearly saw. Then VAR came back and he turned his decision around. But my question, Andy, is: are these two sides the biggest threat to Lens in that race to be the best of the rest?
Well, I mean, I suppose the caveat is that the season is about to go into hibernation, and it's really, really hard to say what's going to happen when everybody comes back. I mean, things will be reset. Some teams might really benefit from it. You think of Lyon and you know, other clubs who've maybe not had a great start to the season. Nice, for example. I think that, you know, Rennes are a very good team, and that is obvious. You know, we saw them have a couple of disappointing results at the start of the season, and now they remain unbeaten since Lens beat them at the end of August. I'm not sure how many games that is now, but it's been, 10 games in the league anyway, plus the European run. So it's been a very good run of results for them. I know their winning run came to an end in that match in Lille, but as you say, Lille have been improving considerably too. You know, they were unlucky to lose in Lyon last weekend and you know, held here, but they are. I think
the derby win over Lens as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of work out: are they doing as well as we expected? Are they doing better than we expected? I mean, you know, given the focus was on other clubs, I think in the summer, obviously the likes of Lyon and Marseille and Monaco, as always is, and given the number of players that Lille lost, you know, essentially their title-winning team from only 18 months ago has been completely broken up now. There are only 2 or 3 players left, aren't there? José Font, Benjamin Andre, Jonathan Bamba. That's about it. It's a new team with a new coach. But, I mean, you mentioned the Lille-Monaco game, which I was at a couple of weeks ago. That was tremendous fun. They are an entertaining team to watch going forward. And, you know, they're doing well. But I'm not sure that Lille are going to actually finish much higher than they are in the table right now. I think when you look at teams like Monaco, obviously Rennes and 1 or 2 others, you know, let's see what Lyon and Nice do. I think it's still going to be hard for Lille to qualify for Europe. I think certainly Lille would take any European qualification. I think if they finished in 5th place and went into the Europa Conference League, that would be a fine season for them. I think given what Rennes have spent in recent years, given their ambitions, given the fact that they have been regulars in qualifying for Europe in recent seasons, I think they want to be finishing at least 4th. But there is so much competition for these European places, and as I say, I think it's just really, really, really hard to say what's going to happen after this 6-week break for the World Cup. I mean, the games on the 28th of December. That's when Ligue returns. 10 days after the World Cup final, they could be fairly chaotic and a bit, you know, very interesting because, you know, who knows what is going to happen between now and then. So let's reserve judgment for now.
And on the late charge, well, they won't have as many players involved as others perhaps in the World Cup as well.
Maybe Strasbourg
Luke, on this idea of the split, and with one game remaining, how many eyes are going to be on the World Cup next weekend in this round 15 of Ligue 1, and how is that going to have a big effect on who plays first of all, but also how they play? I mean, there are going to be a lot of players who will know that they're on their way because all the squads are being announced more or less this week. So they're going to know they're on the plane or not on the plane. And And how is that going to affect the matches this weekend?
Well, you say how many eyes are on it. Seemingly quite a few eyes at PSG are already on that, because Christophe Galtier came out post-match and said that he felt as though they were kind of restraining themselves. They kind of were a bit fearful almost of going into some tackles. So I think it's already affecting the games. I mean, I feel as though there's going to be slightly less physicality than we see usually in Ligue 1. Ligue 1 is known for being a very physical league. I don't think we're going to see that quite to the same extent in this final game week, because as Galtier rightly says, and I have a bit of sympathy for him here, he's saying that, you know, players are seeing other players get injured every other day at the minute. It's someone else is injured out of the World Cup, and that's going to weigh in the minds of players whose dream it is, of course, to go to the World Cup, and who don't want to miss it because of, you know, a hamstring being pulled in the final game before the World Cup. And obviously this schedule has been so tight to fit in this World Cup in the middle of the season, and it's getting into winter anyway. And I think it's just a combination of factors that mean that players are actually quite vulnerable right at this moment in time.
I think on that, I mean, PSG, you know, I know we'll talk about PSG's game in a moment, but I think PSG's last match next weekend is against Auxerre, and given that they have this 5-point lead at the moment in the table,
last weekend,
it's probably a case for Christophe Galtier to rest all the really big guns and really, you know, a home game against Auxerre is one they should be winning anyway, right? Now, a lot of teams in Ligue 1 will be affected by the World Cup, but none of them anything like to the same extent as Paris Saint-Germain. I think the injuries thing is really significant. You know, I mean, I actually ruptured my calf muscle in June playing five-a-sides, just playing a 5-yard pass. The muscle just exploded. And I have not run, far less play football since then. That's 4.5 months ago. Now, no professional footballers will be getting better treatment than I have, and they'll be back quicker, but you're still talking 2 or 3 months, you know? So it is not just, you know, at this point, if somebody, it can happen very easily, and if it happens next weekend, it's not just the World Cup they miss, it's possibly a chunk of the games after the World Cup too. And I think you have to sometimes put yourself in the minds of these footballers that, I mean, Lionel Messi is an obvious one, right? I mean, he is arguably the greatest player of all time. This is his last chance to win the World Cup. And it could all be gone just like that with an injury, you know, next weekend or maybe in one of the first games out in Qatar. So these things have to be weighing on the minds of these players. And I think it will have a big impact on the matches next weekend. I really sympathize. I mean, you know, we might get the chance to go to the World Cup for, you know, as a fan or for work, you know, in 10, 20 years' time. But a footballer's window is very short, you know, and they can't afford to let it go. So I think the next round of I mean, you know, you have to say, really, it's crazy. They're playing league games next weekend, 7 days before the World Cup starts. Absolutely crazy. But here we are. This is the situation that we find ourselves in, that the leagues found themselves in. They had no choice.
We've also seen 6 rounds of European football as well, which normally doesn't finish till mid to late December. That's all finished in the first week of November as well. We always used to say that the World Cup was so tough on English and England, and because of the Premier League and sides of so many players in the Premier League, just because the intensity was so long. And at the end of 38 rounds of Premier League football, all the players were broken or on the verge of being broken anyway. And so the World Cup, it was hard. And when you looked at a Germany where so many Bundesliga players played 2 or 4 rounds less, you know, less matches in the league as well, and perhaps with Bayern Munich they could contain themselves a little bit more anyway. So that, at least that's been removed this time round. Everyone's going to be exhausted in theory after, except Scotland, Australia.
I don't like the fact that England's only mitigating factor has been taken away from them. So yeah, that worries me a little bit.
In other results, on Friday night, for the first time in over 15 years, Troyes and Auxerre met in the top flight. The evergreen Ronnie Lopez, he still looks about 21. He gave Troyes what looked like being a much-needed win before Gaëtan Perrin equalised for Pelissier's side. Auxerre undefeated under their new boss. Bottom club Angers entertained high-flying Lens. Yes, go.
Hold
Andy.
on. I object to calling Ronnie Lopez evergreen. He's only 26. He's only 26. I don't think you can be evergreen.
Is he only 26?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's why he only looks 21 then.
I don't think you can be evergreen until you're like
back.
32,
I had to pull up his file. Because I was thinking, now he's Manchester City originally. if he's playing at Troyes now, it has to be something to do with Citigroup. But he's played for Lille, he's played for Monaco a couple of times. He's played. Where else did he play in France? He's played somewhere else.
Well,
he
he
played
was
for Nice,
Monaco, Lille, Nice, yeah, and but he still belongs.
And then Seville.
Still belongs to Sevilla. He's just never really played for Sevilla, and they've loaned him out again to Troyes. So, he's only 26. He's
only 26. Sorry, he's the young, sprightly 26-year-old Ronnie Lopez, who's been in French football for a long time, and played for 4 different clubs already at the age of 26 in a foreign country. So they bottom club Angers, just to keep moving then, we're up against Lens. I really wanted to talk about the assists for Lens, because there was something, they weren't the most spectacular, but technically they were both unexpected and very difficult to control. Florent Sotoka's pass for Wesley Saïd is just brilliant. And I think he is becoming more and more underrated, only because he's becoming better and better, if you like. I mean, when he first arrived in the top flight, he was a good, honest, hard-running. I think he finished top scorer in Ligue 2 with Lens when they were promoted. He was good in the air. He ran hard. He's an honest footballer. But he's starting to show that he's a lot more than just an honest footballer. He is a leader in this Lens side. And Kevin Danzo's assist with a bouncing ball for a header back across the face of goal was also brilliant. But let's have a word about Florent Sotoka before Blasic got a consolation goal in that one. But let's give Sotoka some love here, Andy.
Yeah, I've got a soft spot for Florian Sotoka because he used to work at motorway toll, which I used to do for a couple of days once at one point when I was younger. So I've got a soft spot for him in that regard. And a guy with a really kind of unusual backstory, as you say. I mean, he'd hardly played in League. I know he had a couple of games for Montpellier several years ago, but he'd not really played in Ligue 1 until he came up with Lens a couple of years back. And what he's done with them is incredible. I think he played did he play at the World Student Games for France or something like that? I think he did,
really?
Earlier in his career. Check that, listeners, but I'm pretty sure that he did.
I will. Is that the university games?
Yes, it's
student games.
It's buried in my commentary notes somewhere, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that he played in the World Student Games and possibly scored in the final, 8-9 years ago. It's not impossible that I'm going mad because that may also be the case. But he's had a very interesting backstory, and I think it's testament to the work of Franck Hez as a coach as well. What he's got out of Florian Sotoka. I mean, that was a great assist for the first goal. He offers so much to that team. He is a leader. He's popped up with some really important goals this season. The only game that Lens have lost actually was the game which he missed a penalty, but he's really impressive, and It's. I mean, you called Ronnie Lopez evergreen. I think Florian Sotoka is slightly more
really is evergreen,
deserving of being described as evergreen. But he's done fantastically well. And as I say, it just shows you what Lens have done. They're more than the sum of their parts. For them to be where they are in the table, 5 points behind PSG, but 5 points ahead of everybody else. Franck Hez was sort of playing down the talk of them qualifying for Europe at the weekend. I mean, we are still in a situation where, if Lens finish in the top 5 and qualify for Europe at all, that will be fantastic for them. I think any European competition they get into, the stadium will be packed, their fans will love it. But we're also getting to the stage now where it's going to become more and more disappointing if they fail to qualify for Europe, and even if they fail to qualify for the Champions League, because some of their fans will be starting to dream. And they've been in the Champions League before, I mean, in the early 2000s, they were appearing in the Champions League. Side. They were playing the likes of Bayern Munich and had that famous win against Arsenal at Wembley in the late 90s. So they've got that history, and I think it would be tremendous to see Lens in a big European competition next season.
AS Monaco, fresh from a great win over Red Star Belgrade, which saw them through in Europe. They backed up with a 2-0 win away to Toulouse. And Luke, there were a couple of good goals in this one as well. Alexander Golovin with a great finish. I like Alexander Golovin. I don't think we're yet really to have seen the best of him, not consistently over a whole season anyway. And Briel Mbolo got his third in 4 as well, 7 goals this season. How are Monaco tracking? Back on track after that little waiver?
Yeah, there's a little blip, wasn't there, in the middle of the season? I think there's been a couple already this season, but both times they've managed to bounce back. I think, the goal scorers in this are quite interesting, Golovin and Mbolo, because they're both limited by the same factors, and that's their own bodies, basically, because Golovin, since his arrival in the Principality, has not been able to string together any run of form, any run of games, really, because of injury issues. Likewise with Embolo in Germany, he's had so many injury issues, and that's what's limited his career, because he really burst on the scene in Euro 2016, linked with basically every big club throughout Europe. And then it just didn't end up happening for him. And he stayed in the Bundesliga for a while and is now in Monaco. But both of them have looked brilliant this season. I think that's credit to the medical department at Monaco. And Monaco and Philippe Clement speak about this regularly, how they're getting their schedules right to keep them in the peak physical form, because both of those two players fit and firing and being able to string together those matches, I think it makes a big difference for Golovin. And Golovin scored basically an identical goal against Belgrade in midweek. It's an absolutely beautiful goal. He really cuts in on his right, just outside the box. And it's the curl, but it's also the trajectory of it. It's so difficult to say because it's coming from quite a height and then it's coming down kind of over the goalkeeper. So there's very, very little you can do. I mean, I've seen him try that at least 30 times and most of them balloon over the bar. But if you can get more of them under the bar, that's a real asset for Monaco. So obviously Monaco back on track. I think they'll be right in there. We keep mentioning different teams to the Champions League spaces. That will be a team that I would thoroughly expect to be around there by the end of the season. And they already are there now after having a bit of a waiver that left them in mid-table, but they'll be there or thereabouts. And I think if they can keep players like Golovin and like Embolo fit and they get the best out of them, then I think it really maximises their chances.
That was Toulouse's first home loss in 5. Another side that enjoyed joy in Europe in midweek was Nice, and they added to Brest's woes Sofiane Diop, a former Monaco man, with a long-range effort that deflected off Gaëtan Laborde and into the net. Lucien Favre's side now undefeated in 5. And into the top half of the table. Quite remarkable. And if there's any inspiration for Strasbourg to be had, they just need to look at what Les Rouges et Noirs are doing. Laborde with 3 goals in a week now, and Brest have won just 1 in their last 11. Clermont conceded an early penalty at home to Montpellier, dispatched with typical aplomb from Teji Savanier. Komnan Andrić and Grejon Kie both missed penalties for the home side, but the Serbian Andrić did manage to get on the score sheet for a 4th time this season. It finished 1-1 in that one. Montpellier just about managing to break that 5-game losing streak. Reims had England under-21 striker Folarin Balogun to thank. The on-loan Arsenal player's 3rd penalty, 8th goal this season, enough to secure all 3 points against Nantes. The Canaries having their wings clipped after a stunning win in midweek away to Olympiacos. And Reims, amazingly, Andy, still unbeaten since the sacking of coach Oscar Garcia. The results weren't there under the Spaniard, who also struggled at Saint-Etienne in his first stint in French football. But Balogun, he is really turning heads.
Yeah, 8 goals for him now, really impressive. Another VAR penalty, I believe, actually, in that game for Reims to beat Nantes. I mean, yeah, they held PSG to 0-0 draw at the beginning of last month, and that was when Oscar Garcia was back in Spain for personal reasons, back in Barcelona for personal reasons. And Will Still was standing in at that point, taking charge of the team. I thought they were really well organised. They battled really hard defensively. It occurred to me that they seem to have this ability to keep bringing through defenders, because when you look at the guys that they sold Wout Faes to Leicester City at the beginning of the season. He was Leicester's replacement for Wesley Fofana when he went to Chelsea. Before that, of course, they've had the guys like Axel Disasi, now at Monaco. Bjorn Engels a few years ago was a really good player for them, went on to play in the Premier League for a bit with Aston Villa. So they've done really well at bringing through defenders, and they've got 1 or 2 really good centre-backs now, still being sort of marshalled by the evergreen Younes Abdelhamid, who is very much evergreen, I think, Younes Abdelhamid.
He is evergreen, absolutely.
So I think, and then, of course, they got a 0-0 draw with Lorient just after that, didn't they? And there's another clean sheet for them yesterday. So results picking up for them. I mean, they're a side who are always likely to be probably lower mid-table at best. That would count as a good season for them. But one of these days we're going to have to talk about Will Still, because he's very, for a coach, he is very much the opposite of evergreen. He's 30, and now he finds himself on the bench. He's a very young coach. Was at Reims, went away, was working at Standard Liège back in his native Belgium. last season and has come back again, and now he's got his chance on the bench. So we'll see, obviously, what Reims choose to do beyond the break for the World Cup. Will they keep faith in Will still? Will he still be there, etc., or will somebody else be in charge? But yeah, for now, it's encouraging for them. I think also a disappointing result for Nantes, that because they did really well in Europe in midweek to get through with the win against Olympiacos and the other result in their group going their way. A big achievement for them to be in the Europa League knockout phase, but their league form is disappointing. They've not won an away game this season. They're only a point above the bottom four, and they need to sort that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a discussion to be had about what benefit sometimes there is for French sides being in Europe. I mean, Marseille's form has dropped off a cliff. I think being out of the Champions League, even though the circumstances around it were a little bit embarrassing, is maybe slightly too strong a word, but it wasn't a great look to go out in the way that Marseille did.
It was disappointing.
We'll go for that.
It was disappointing
in midweek.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for them that might be a slight benefit to not have European competition. Same with Nantes. I think it was always going to be a struggle, especially when there was very little investment in the squad over the summer for them to play every 3 or 4 matches. And I think that's showing. I think they have been outperforming a little bit in Europe and then underperforming a little in the league. I think over the course of the season, as we get towards the back end of the season, as they probably get knocked out of the Europa League, maybe in the next stage or the stage after that, I think that their league performances will improve and they'll find themselves comfortably mid-table. But yeah, currently, then looking at the table, it's a little bit worrying. They're quite far down there, so bit of work to do.
They are. They're in a fair bit of trouble. We're going to chat about Marseille and Les Bleus coming up later as well. But before then, early on Sunday, 1 p.m. kickoff. We know Paris Saint-Germain and the big teams don't like 1 p.m. kickoffs on a Sunday, early on a Sunday. But PSG were looking to continue their unbeaten start to the season against a Lorient side. Despite the fact that they were winless in their last 3, are without a doubt the surprise package of the season. Jeremy Clayman called all the action.
Vogo showing a level of confidence that could be seen as madness, because Hugo Ekitike plays it to Neymar and Paris leads à Le Moustoir. A calamity for Vogo and Les Merlus. The Brazilian has struck again. Suspended against Juve, back with a goal in Ligue 1 Uber Eats. It's a horror show though for Lorient, creating their own problems, and they trail to the champions. Vincent Lagoff linking with Lebris, back to the captain. Takes a touch, has a look up, and Ponceau fires over from a very inviting position. Kalulu. Lovely Ponceau, great change of direction. Vitinha fouls him, but advantage played. Vincent Lagoff, Terem Moffi, oh, it's a beautiful work, chance! The Nigerian brings Le Moustoir to life. Les Merlus are back on level terms. Advantage played, and Lorient took full advantage. Terem Moffi, step over. The ball through from Enzo Lefebvre. And the Nigerian international smashes home his 9th of the campaign. Being cancelled out by the brilliant work of Enzo Lefebvre and of course Terem Moffi. And now Theo Lebris with a chance to deliver. Cuts in onto his right. Oh, it's off the crossbar. Terem Moffi, so close to a second. Ball whipped in. It's just past the far post. It's Danilo at the near post, but it comes off the head of Tango Ouattara. Neymar from the other side. Danilo! 5 goals last term. This the first in Ligue 1 Uber Eats this campaign for Danilo, and it's a big goal. that puts Paris back in the lead. Brilliant delivery from Neymar. And once Danilo was in front of goal, a clinical header from the Portuguese international. Vito Mannoni with absolutely no chance.
Luke, we're going to talk quickly about this one because we've still got a lot to get through, but Terem Moffi equalised after that Neymar goal. He then hit the crossbar as well. Lorient, what was really nice about what Lorient did, because it's not easy coming up against Paris Saint-Germain. I think they've won only one of their last 15, but they did do that at home, and one of their last 15 against PSG, which was a couple of years ago, where Terem Moffi starred again. But you know, he scored a wonderful goal, but as Kevin Gamero and Jean-Rickner Bellegarde can also attest, it doesn't count for much to score a great goal when you lose. But Lorient can still take plenty of positives from this, don't you think?
I mean, 100%. We've seen that drop off now. They are now maybe slightly more like what they're probably still quite a bit ahead of where we'd expect them to be at this point of the season. I think we would be honest in saying that lots of us tipped them for relegation. But even in this recent winless streak where they've failed to win some difficult matches, there's still been massive positives. Nobody would have expected them to beat PSG. They've just come into a difficult part of their schedule, which was quite foreseen. But what they've shown in those matches is that what preceded it was not a fluke. Despite the lack of results, the performances have still been there. The individual performances as well as the collective performances have still been there. Enzo Lefebvre is still looking great. Terem Moffi, who've spoken about, 9 goals now in the league, is still looking great. So, yeah, I think it's really all quite positive for Lorient despite this defeat. I think they were maybe slightly unlucky. It wasn't a game of many, many chances, and it was reliant on a Danilo late goal to settle it. So I think, yeah, overall, very, very positive for Lorient. I still don't see them getting really any European football, but I think what constitutes success for them is a top half finish and some of their young players, because it's a very young squad developing and probably being sold on for a massive profit in the summer.
And PSG watch, there was no Lionel Messi. There may not be any Lionel Messi next week either. As you mentioned, there's a big World Cup and an important World Cup coming for him. Neymar said after the game that the more physical it gets, the more people try and tackle him, the more he wants to dribble at them. We saw that at the last World Cup as well. Lots of contact, lots of rolling around.
Yeah.
He's almost got that out of his game a little bit this season. I mean, and this season he has been in spectacular form. Maybe they haven't caught him as much and been able to tackle him as much. But how do you see this PSG side, and keep it on PSG in Ligue 1 at the moment, because Kylian Mbappe didn't have the greatest of games either against Lorient. What do you make of that front three? I mean, yes, the World Cup is obviously a hugely imposing factor in what's happened the last couple of weeks and what's going to happen in the next week as well. But are they still looking as good as everyone thought in that first month of the season?
Well, it's been a bit more. They've been interrupted because each of them has sat out games, and particularly Neymar. And I know Neymar was suspended against Juventus in the Champions League game in midweek, and Messi's missed a few matches here and there. They've been particularly wary of not injuring him. I mean, I'd be interested to know what the conversations are there, to what extent they're saying to Messi, "Don't worry, but we're going to make sure you're okay for the World Cup." And how does that conversation play out? Because most of the time, club coaches would say the priority has to be on the club. And I think in Messi's case, that's not the case at the moment. Obviously, he's been using the club games to make sure he is in the best possible shape for the World Cup, but he's also, sitting out games as a result of that. Now, there have been times this season when the three of them have just been magnificent. I mean, I was at the Champions League game against Maccabi Haifa a couple of weeks ago. It was like an exhibition game, really, because PSG were so good, but at the same time, Maccabi Haifa were very limited and nothing like good enough to compete with PSG. But some of the football that those three were playing together with each other was just magnificent in that match. And it's been a great start to the season. I mean, I know at the weekend we saw Hugo Ekitike coming in and getting a rare start. I've talked about Ekitike before. I don't understand it. I don't understand really why PSG had to take him at this point. And, it's only, I think, the second or third game that he started. I see that he got a rating of 4 in L'Equipe this morning for his performance. I mean, very hard for him to make an impact coming into that PSG side on such a rare occasion to start the game. But it is going to be, and I've said this several times already in this podcast, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after the World Cup with Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar. I mean, I hadn't really made the link until a couple of days ago, but I've been thinking about the World Cup, and everybody's been saying, actually, the three big favourites are France, Argentina, and Brazil. So Mbappe's France, Messi's Argentina, Neymar's Brazil. Each one of them is the big star. The France team, you can maybe say Benzema, shares the limelight with Mbappe, but each of them, the big star for their country, and each of their countries are among the big favourites to win the World Cup. They can't all win the World Cup. What kind of frame of mind are they going to be in after the World Cup? I mean, you talk about Neymar provoking defenders and 2018 rolling around on the ground. I mean, I was in Brazil in 2014, and the trauma for that nation when he suffered that injury in the quarterfinal against Colombia, and that was caused by him provoking defenders and the Colombians deciding they were not going to have any of that. Now, it's possible that Brazil and Argentina will play each other in the semi-finals. If they each win their group, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but can you imagine that? A Messi against Neymar World Cup semi-final?
Oh, we had it, the Copa America final last time out was that, wasn't it?
But this is on a different scale, Robbie. So that's possible. And then 2 weeks after that, you'd have Messi and Neymar supposedly coming back in PSG playing Strasbourg on a chilly, freezing late December night at the Parc des Princes. So I think the immediate offshoot of that is that there's very little chance that any of these guys will play in the first league game back after the World Cup. There's quite the possibility that some of them will not play this weekend. But they have been, when they've been on the game, when they've all been on the field, they've been magnificent this season for PSG. But as I say, they will have the World Cup they will have had the World Cup in the back of their minds for a long time. So let's see. I mean, it's nearly 10 o'clock on Monday morning here in Paris. In a couple of hours, it's the draw for the last 16 of the Champions League. That's another thing to talk about, because the fact they missed out on winning their group means that they are exposed to a very, very tough draw in the last 16 of the Champions League. Possibly Real Madrid again, very possibly a Bayern
Munich are big favourites,
Bayern is your possibility, Manchester City. So we're going to have time to talk about that, but that's another thing that PSG are going to have to think about. The fact is that they really have to get beyond the last 16 of the Champions League this time, so they'll need Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe to be working together, pulling in the right direction. But that's a long way off. That's 3 months away, these games. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about them.
Very quickly, Luke.
Yeah, delving back into the hypothetical very, very briefly. Obviously, Mbappe has described his relationship with Neymar as hot and cold previously. I don't think if they come up against each other in maybe a World Cup final that will do their relationship any good either. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that's also a slightly interesting hypothesis, as Andy has rightly brought up, because it can change the dynamic within the squad coming back from the World Cup, and that's a factor.
I'm not sure. I don't have that same cynicism as you two about it. I remember the pictures of Neymar and Paredes and Messi after the Copa America final, all having a sit down and a chat after. But I mean, that was a big moment for Messi as well. Yes, it is different.
It is different, and
they've all won Copa Americas now.
Yeah, and also, sorry, I know you want to move on. Just to finish in this, I mean, also, I think that the factor is that for Neymar and Messi,
I want to move on for you guys. You guys are the ones that have the day starting in France.
I know, but just on Neymar, I think Neymar and Messi in particular. I mean, Mbappe's already won the World Cup. He will probably have one or two other World Cups, but this is probably the last, certainly for Messi and possibly for Neymar as well. I mean, he's hinted at that too.
Neymar's 30 now.
Yeah, so you're right about the Copa America final and stuff, but this is different. This is the World Cup, and it's their chance, possibly their last chance to win it for each of them, and I think that does increase the pressure quite considerably.
Listening to Andy Scott and Luke Entwistle on Le Beau Jeu. Time for our Deja Who, and I've been too nice in recent weeks. Plenty of correct answers, so this one's a tough one. Let's get straight into it. If you know the answer, send us an email to league1podcast@gmail.com. You have to answer who am I, and then also the bonus question. And next week, we will have our final November quiz. All correct answers will be announced after the World Cup with the shirt on the line. Who am I? Plucked from the anonymity of my homeland's third division by the reigning French champions, I arrived in Ligue 1 at the age of 22 and my career took off under the coaching of a French football legend. I spent 4 seasons in France, winning the Ligue 1 title, the Trophée des Champions, and a runners-up medal in the Coupe de France. My career continued to grow when I left France and returned home, becoming part of a legendary club side and almost helping my country to a first international triumph. Who am I, and what special place do I hold, along with my teammates and the opposition, in World Cup history? There you go. So a tricky World Cup inspired one for everyone at home. If you think you know the answer, get on to us. Send us the emails at league1podcast@gmail.com. Final match of the round, the Olympico. While Europe was good for most French clubs, it certainly wasn't for Olympique de Marseille, bundled out in the last seconds by Tottenham. And they were looking to bounce back against a Lyon side under their new coach, Larry White. Andy Scott, it was a busy weekend for you. You were calling the action.
A lot of passes going astray in the early stages, but space now for Nuno Tavares to run into. The ball in behind Malo Gusto for Amin Harit to play it across the face of goal, surely. And it's Nicolas Tagliafico who gets an absolutely crucial touch on that ball. Cengiz Under trying to keep it alive, but look at this from Tagliafico. Well, good build-up play from Marseille, bringing the stadium to life again. Gigot comes forward for this. Swinging ball, there's the header from Samuel Gigot. And the Velodrome erupts. Marseille take the lead just before half-time. Samuel Gigot gets his second Ligue 1 goal since joining Marseille. He netted in the win here against Lille in September. That's what it means to him. Starting tonight in place of the injured Eric Bailly. And we have a situation similar to that of midweek against Tottenham in the Champions League here, when it was a header from a corner that led to the opening goal just before the break in that game. The question now will be, can Marseille build on this and go on and claim what would be a huge victory for them? Caqueret's delivery, turned over the bar by Paul Lopez, the first save that the Marseille goalkeeper has had to make. That was heading into the top corner. Payet is on. It's not long for Dimitri Payet to turn on the magic. Even at 35, of course, he can still produce something very special. Throw-in taken quickly. Payet again. Oh, it's a lovely bit of skill from Dimitri Payet. Close with the cross in. There's the header at the near post from Alexis Sanchez, is just wide. Didn't really get any proper connection on it. Guendouzi. Fine play from Matteo Guendouzi. Can he go all the way? Anthony Lopez with the save. Fantastic 1-2 with Alexis Sanchez. And Cherki hits it, and it flashes just wide. Well, that had Paul Lopez panicking. I think Ryan Cherki was just hoping maybe that shot would get a touch on its way. Dimitri Payet marking Anthony Lopez at a Lyon corner in the 95th minute at the Velodrome. Cherki's delivery and the header at the back post from one of the smallest players on the field, Nicolas Tagliafico. The Marseille fans breathe a collective sigh of relief.
Now, a second goal for Samuel Gigot since he arrived from Russia. A bit of money ball there from Pablo Longoria, going and plucking this local boy in the end from the south coast of France to return to Marseille. We've been in the group chat, lots of jokes about Gigot, who I mentioned earlier in the season, is basically a lamb cut that is very popular in the brasseries and around France. You can always, if ever you're in doubt, you can always go for a Gigot. It's generally quite good in a brasserie. And Andy, a deserved win for Marseille in a game that failed probably to live up to the heights of recent Olympicos.
Yeah, really disappointing game. really, really flat, I think, in many ways. I mean, I know that obviously the atmosphere of the Velodrome means that you can't really call it a flat occasion, but it didn't live up to expectations at all. There was one yellow card. There were, I think I saw a stat, I can't really remember it exactly now, but I think up until the last 10 minutes, it was the fewest shots on target, the fewest shots on goal in a game this season. Then suddenly there was a little flurry towards the end. There was a chance for Guendouzi that was saved by Anthony Lopez, and then Ryan Cherki had a shot just wide at the other end, but there was very little. I mean, there was 2 saves of Paul Lopez that you would pick out in that game, and Marseille a couple of balls into the box before they got the goal. Disappointing. I mean, the Olympico has always been one of the fieriest matches, not always for good, not always for the right reasons. Obviously, we had the match between the clubs in Lyon last year, which was abandoned, and the Mathieu Valbuena match in Marseille a few years ago now, when the game was stopped for a while, wasn't it? Because the Marseille fans were letting Valbuena know that they were not too happy with him. Disappointing. A good result from. I mean, I was at the Velodrome along with Ian Holyman in midweek for the match against Tottenham, and that was obviously, deeply disappointing ending to that game. I mean, beyond disappointing. I mean, how they let that, even Europa League qualification slip from their hands at the end was just incredible. After a great night at the Velodrome again, terrific atmosphere, and they just let it all go. So for them to pick themselves
up,
good
performance for the most part, like a good first half.
For much of the game, they could have. I mean, had that big chance at the end against Tottenham for Sead Kolasinac when he put the header wide. So it could have ended very differently. I mean, the front page of the local newspaper down in Marseille, La Provence, yesterday, the front page headline was "Victory or Crisis," which kind of sums up the mood in Marseille at the best of times. That don't win this game, it's a crisis, and which is a bit absurd, really. But that was the situation in Marseille. I think Igor Tudor's job would have been in a bit of trouble if they hadn't got the result last night, and they held on for the victory, and that's them back up to 4th in the table, 7 points clear of Lyon, who were very, very disappointing. You wanted me to talk about Samuel Gigot very briefly, so I will do that and say this about Samuel Gigot, because he hadn't played in Ligue 1 until this season. He was away. He played in Belgium. He was at Spartak Moscow. Marseille agreed to sign him in January, I think, and then he eventually came in the summer. But I was looking at Samuel Gigot's early career, actually, just earlier on, and he played for Arles Avignon in Ligue 2. Arles Avignon, the club who had that fleeting season in the top flight about, just over a decade ago, and then went back down to the second division, then disappeared altogether from the professional ranks.
Kamel Merriam, did he go back and play for them?
Kamel Merriam played for them. But so listen to this, right? So Arles Avignon, the last league game that Samuel Gigot played for Arles Avignon, one of the last games, 2 of his teammates, the midfield for Arles Avignon that game, Teji Savanier, who's gone on to be obviously a great player for Montpellier, and Ismail Ben Nasser, who's now one of the best midfielders in Serie A with AC Milan, the Algerian international, and you had Samuel Gigot in the defence alongside Gaël Givet captaining the team. So somehow that was a second division team, and he went on from there to play in Belgium and Russia, and now playing in Ligue 1. It's his second goal in Ligue 1 this season, because he scored the winner against Lille a couple of months ago, and he of course was in the wars last night because he took a nasty knock to the head in a clash with one of his teammates, Jordan Veretout, which forced him off the field. So he was the injured hero last night for Marseille, but it was not a good game, I have to say. Not a good game at all.
Marseille out of Europe now. Quickly, is this their chance to recuperate during the World Cup and come back and really make a charge to return to the Champions League again?
For me, yeah. I mean, I believe that. I thought that was addressed to Andy, that one.
Wake up!
I would say that once again, we keep talking about loads of different teams in the fight. They'll be there or thereabouts. Do they have enough? I didn't tip them to be on the podium at the start of the season, so I'm not going to tip them for it now. I think there's a few issues within that side, and I think that, as Andy rightly says, it's one of those clubs where crisis can very, very, very quickly set in. And once it does, it can often lead to a bit of a spiral. I didn't back them to win either against Lyon. I thought that the spiral was very much in motion, and that this was the downward trend that would see Tudor potentially find himself in a little bit of trouble over the World Cup break. So we'll see if this is the start of a bit of a renaissance and if they can kind of make their way back up the table. But prior to this match, the form was pretty dreadful, and I didn't see a lot inspiring in what I saw from Marseille on Sunday night. I think it was very much a case of Lyon were just worse on the night, and they really offered absolutely nothing in the attacking phases, apart from Malo Gusto, who had a couple of occasions where he looked slightly dangerous. Lacazette, Dembele, and then Toko Ekambi, who came on at half-time, were all completely absent from the game. So I think it was a case of Marseille were just the least worst team on the night.
All right, we're going to chat World Cup very quickly, but before then, a quick look at the Ligue ladder then. After 14 matches, Paris Saint-Germain 5 points clear of Lens, who are 5 points clear of Rennes. Then we have 4 teams covered by just a point. Rennes, 28. Marseille, back in the top 4. Monaco and Lorient, all on 27, but Lorient are heading in the wrong direction. That's 4 without a win for them. Lille, Lyon and Nice round out 7, 8 and 9. Clermont round out the top 10. Then there's a 3-point drop back to Reims and Toulouse on 16 points. Troyes on 14. Montpellier, Auxerre and Nantes just above the relegation zone. And then into that dreaded bottom 4, Ajaccio on 11 points. Strasbourg and Brest on 10. And Angers, who have lost their last 5 on the trot, are bottom with 2 wins and 2 draws. 8 points is all they have to show for their season so far. In the scorers charts, Mbappe and Neymar have 11, followed by Moffi and Jonathan David on 9, with 8 goals. Terrier, Lacazette and Balogun. And in the assists department, Messi already has 10 assists again. Neymar has 9. There are some familiar names being repeated over and over again. 5 assists for Jonathan Klose and Caio Henrique. Now, before we go, we're going to chat World Cup. Yes, there is another round of matches obviously coming up in France next weekend, and it will be the standard Friday. I'll just run through the matches quickly. Lyon versus Nice, which is always traditionally one with a little bit of spice. Lens, Clermont, Rennes, Toulouse. Paris Saint-Germain are back for that early kickoff on Sunday against Auxerre, 1 p.m. French time. Brest, Troyes. Lille, Angers, Montpellier, Reims, Nantes, Ajaccio, Strasbourg, Lorient, and then Monaco versus Marseille. That is a tasty derby, Mediterranean derby to close out round 15, but we have to keep moving. I want to chat Les Bleus very quickly. We know that France will play Australia, Denmark, and Tunisia in the World Cup. So some big matches there for the French. They have had their injury problems. The Federation has had all sorts of issues off the pitch. We're used to this in France, of the media and everyone getting on the back of the team heading into a World Cup saying they're not playing good football. They can't, this is not what we, the French, want in terms of French flair. And we also know that after making a final, 2002 was not good. I think they finished 28th out of 32 there. They failed to score a goal. 2010, we all know what happened there after the final in 2006. They come into this one as defending champions, Andy. Is it going to go true to form, or are they, as you just mentioned earlier, one of the top 3 favourites?
Yeah, I've kind of sort of swayed one way or the other with France for a while. I mean, I think at first I was thinking, well, they've got a fantastic team. Of course, they're going to go far. And then it occurred to me, well, obviously they're having these problems off the field, considerable injury issues. I mean, the fact is that they're without their 2 starting midfielders from 2018, Paul Pogba and N'Golo Kanté, are out, and they haven't got that much strength and depth, really.
Blaise Matuidi retired.
Blaise Matuidi's gone. You're looking at Aurélien Tchouameni plus one other. I think that's going to be interesting to see who it is. It might be Youssouf Fofana, potentially, because he's looked good when the couple of games he's played for France. Adrien Rabiot, another major contender. So issues in midfield, those things combined, along with history, as you say, 2002 was a disaster. They were eliminated after 2 games. They didn't score a goal, obviously far less win a game. There was an injury to Zinedine Zidane, which was a factor back then as well, of course. 2010 was on another level altogether. But despite these things, then I've kind of swayed back the other way again and said to myself, well, they've got Karim Benzema and Kylian Mbappe, and Antoine Griezmann's finding a bit of form again. Ousmane Dembele, if he can stay fit. Christopher Nkunku. They've got tremendous attacking potential.
They've got so much talent.
And if they can supply these guys and be solid enough at the back and in midfield, then they will stand a chance of going far. But I'm not sure they're going to win the World Cup. It's just hard to believe. I mean, nobody has retained the World Cup since Brazil in 1962. So I think that it might be somewhere in between. I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I don't think they're going to win the World Cup. That's just my feeling at this moment in time. But they shouldn't have too many problems in the group because, no disrespect, Robbie, I think Australia have one of the weakest squads going there. I really do, and I think that Tunisia. I think that Tunisia are a fairly limited team on this level as well. I think it might be interesting, though. Final point on this: that I don't know if they'll win the group because I think Denmark are a decent side, and that may set up a last 16 tie against Argentina. So Mbappe, Messi, as it was in 2018. Yeah. So there is that possibility. That might be dangerous for them. Might be very, very interesting indeed. So look, keep an eye on that one.
Luke, any surprises you're expecting in Didier Deschamps' squad, which will be announced as usual on the evening news on Wednesday night in France?
I think at this point he knows I don't think he's someone to take a risk and throw someone in at the last minute. He's not that kind of national team coach. I mean, very few national team coaches do that nowadays anyway. I mean, if you wanted a surprise package and it's someone who's not really in the frame is, Aguirre at Rennes. He's just been absolutely brilliant this season. But do I see him getting into the team? Very unlikely. I think that Giroud, it seems like he'll be in. I think he's a must, really. I think that to get the best out of Mbappe, you need to take him. And then we're talking about the midfield partnership, and that's the big, big question mark. And I think it's hard to make an argument of not partnering Fofana and Tchouameni, because this, regardless of what combination you go for, you're going to have two midfielders who don't know each other very well. It's a completely reconstructed midfield. So I think your best option is to go for two players who know each other. Obviously, Fofana and Tchouameni played with each other for a year, at just over a year, even at Monaco. So that's a midfield partnership that they're used to each other. They know how they work. So it's about just taking that from, even though it's 3 months ago since they played together at club level, but I think they can really definitely replicate that and take that to the national team. So I think there's a very, very strong argument for Fofana from nowhere, really. From the start of the season, I don't think anyone would have put him in the national team conversation. Has maybe gone to first choice or second choice in midfield.
He's a fantastic talent, no doubt about that. Karim Benzema, there is some talk that he won't be ready for the first game against Australia, which may just change your judgment, Andy, on our green and gold side. The Socceroos, they could be up for a surprise. We certainly haven't forgotten down under the line ball, goal line technology that gave Pogba the second, and the no penalty on Griezmann for the first goal for France last time out as well, and the Uruguayan referee, who we never saw again in that tournament. But anyway, we're not going to go over all those old stories yet again. This was Le Beau Jeu, the Ligue 1 podcast, official Ligue 1 podcast, talking all things French football. We will be back for one more before the World Cup strikes. Thank you, Andy Scott.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Luke Entwistle, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you all again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Here's an opportunity, Sanchez!
Outrageous goal from Gael Kakuta!
Payet again!
And Goldberg! Messi again. This time maybe Messi's done it!